Before we get into the video, do not forget to like, comment and subscribe. Now this news story is hypocrisy at its finest. Now let me just set the scenario. A thug and his mate who had been drinking after a night out battered a taxi driver and hurled racist abuse at him in what has been regarded as a despicable attack. Then, after they were arrested and tried, one of the criminals screamed at the judge, "Are you going to look after my mum?" as he was sentenced. 39-year-old David Meehan and his drinking partner Anthony Greenall had been uptown and drinking at a bar before ultimately being kicked out for being belligerent drunks and a nuisance. These are two pissheads and they ended up at an address in Deanery Court in Wigan when, in the early hours of the morning, they rang Bluestar Taxis and had asked for a taxi to pick them up. Now the taxi driver, who was the victim in all of this, had actually been warned to be careful by the company, as another driver had had a bad experience with these two pissheads. Now David Meehan and Anthony Greenall were fuming that they were kicked out of the bar in town, but they kept drinking, and that rage, it festered and it manifested itself into an assault on a person who was just doing their job. Now this is case in point of what sensitive men who act hard and drink 3.5 cans of Special K and Special Brew behave. They can't keep attached of their emotions. Now the taxi driver arrived at the address at 4:30 a.m. and the first thing he noticed was that the two men were drunk. He could smell the alcohol irradiating off their body. So the taxi driver then requested money up front, which is not unusual, and the fair price was £3.50. Now Meehan of Springfield, Wigan was immediately rude and was recorded as saying, "Taxi, you better take us home, you black taxi driver." Again, when the driver requested the fare of £3.50, Meehan and Powell responded by turning their pockets inside out and saying, "I have F all, and you must take us home or else you're effed." Now, the unnamed taxi driver remained professional, so credit to him. All he did was ask for the fare and ask for the two drunks to behave. And that simple request triggered a sequence of events that left the taxi driver badly beaten up. Meehan began punching the taxi driver in the back of his head, his face, and to the body, catching him off guard. Now the taxi driver then fell out of the taxi and began to run for his life. Meehan and Greenall gave chase. As for David Meehan, he was actually armed with a wine bottle, and as for Greenall, he was armed with a windscreen wiper that he ripped off from another car. Again, the taxi driver was caught and again he was beaten. Now during the melee, his glasses were knocked off his face. And after the assault, David Meehan went back to the taxi, picked up some coins and a dash cam and began hurling it at the taxi driver. They also kicked his taxi door and kicked the wing mirror off. Again, as the taxi driver attempted to flee, and again Meehan and Greenall pursued the victim like a bunch of cowards whom seek refuge in numbers. Now the attack was so bad that it actually left the taxi driver, made him change his job. Now David Meehan and Anthony Greenall are persistent criminals. I mean, after all, they both have over 10 previous convictions, and their last conviction was not long ago at all. So during the trial, they admitted to a fray after previously denying they were involved in the attack. As part of David Meehan's defence, they said it was alcohol's fault. The defence team also told the court that Meehan cares for his elderly mom and he suffers from mental health issues, including unstable personality disorder and PTSD. Now, Greenall's defence told the court that Greenall cares for his elderly father and is the sole carer for his 7-year-old son. They also went on to say that essentially his faculties aren't all there because he suffered a form of brain damage following a traffic collision when he was 16 years old. Now, David Meehan was actually jailed for 20 months, and as he was taken down by the dock officer, Meehan shouted at the judge, "Are you going to look after my mum? She can't look after herself. You're going to do nothing. I can't believe this." As for Greenall, he was actually given a suspended sentence, in which he thanked the judge with tears in his eyes. He was given 19 months suspended for 2 years. And again, this is hypocrisy. You can't expect to commit a crime, especially when you're assaulting an innocent victim and then cry and moan and bitch and whinge when you get sentenced. If you haven't got it in you to sit in a cell for a few months or a few years, then don't do the crime. Anyway, stay safe. Safe.